Morning, everyone. Welcome back to our morning coffee time here. Let's see who's all here this morning. 50 some of our friends. So welcome to Monday, June the 8th. So it's a big day here at the monastery. Transitions. It's the last day for Venerable Kantiko and Ajahn Sek here. They'll be going back in the wee hours tomorrow morning to Baigiri, and then tonight we'll be receiving Ajahn Krinadamo and Venerable Rakito to stay here for the summer, which coincides with the Vasa or the rains season in Thailand. So last minute preparations for them today. Let's see. And yesterday we had it's the first time we've had people here for the meal offering since late March, I believe. So Charles and a friend of his came out from Portland, and Cecilia, who's in the chat here as well this morning, came out to offer coffee, dessert, and some tonics. So that was nice. The weather was a little threatening. It was cold, and it seemed like it could rain at almost any time. But the sun came out. It didn't do much more than sprinkle a reminder that rain could happen. And later in the day, I heard from my friends in Portland that it rained pretty good in Portland. But so yeah, that's interesting. I'm hoping that this is a tentative step in allowing a little more access and still trying to safeguard the community in this time of the pandemic. And things have been good out here in the gorge for quite a while, but we've had some recent outbreaks that are a little bit concerning, so we'll have to keep our eye on that, and if necessary, stop that. But hopefully we'll be able to keep that going. It's nice to be able to meet with people in person again here on site in very small groups. So we had 3 people here yesterday, and we were trying to keep it to a family or maybe a couple friends coming together for the meal offering and doing it in a safe way outside now that the weather is generally better. So some of the monasteries also have a limited capacity for receiving guests now, and I've heard at least 1 or 2 of the monasteries in Thailand in our tradition of resumed alms round. So we'll see what the summer holds for us here. So let me look at the chat here. We got 87 people. Okay, well, everybody's here, or probably everybody who wants to be here. Good morning, Scott, and happy birthday to your granddaughter. Spaghetti and pumpkin pie. Hopefully in that order. So, and let's see who else is here. Very good. I see a question from Adil. Thank you for putting question marks in front of it. With the chat that goes on between you all, which I don't want to discourage, it does get a little difficult to find questions. So if you maybe add 3 question marks before you say something, if you're trying to catch my attention. I'm not sure too, there might be some way to put at Pacific Hermitage and then it highlights it for me. But, I'll come back to that in a moment, Adil. So Okay, a few interesting questions here already. Okay, Marilyn, I see your question there. That's good. Well, I didn't have any blazing insights this morning, so maybe we'll go to questions here. Starting off with Adil. Ajahn, is there a distinction between immoral and unwholesome? To me, not everything unwholesome is immoral, but everything immoral is unwholesome. I think I would agree with that statement. There's even in the teachings of Sila, there's things that we might say that are objectively are naturally unvirtuous. So, the intentional taking of life is always unskillful, but also it's a transgression of the precepts. And my understanding is, the Buddha held something like that to be almost like the laws of physics. Like it's impossible for one to intentionally take the life of another living creature without that sort of being an immoral act. The exception would be like in the monastic rules. There's exceptions in case of insanity, but then that's affecting how we have to assess what's going on with the intention of someone. They're not in a normal state of mind or their right mind. They don't have the normal faculty that people would have that factors into that. But there's also things that might not be intrinsically or objectively immoral, but situationally they can be the wrong thing. So this would be some of the protocols and conventions that we have in society. So, an example I remember hearing raised in this is it's not immoral to drive on the left side of the road in the United States, but it's wrong. So, and you're transgressing a law or a convention that we've established. So, this is what I mean by the difference between objectively and maybe conditionally. So, there's nothing inherent in the physics of morality that makes driving on left sides of roads immoral, but we live in relationship with a society that has to organize itself in some way, and it sets up rules and regulations and protocols, and the violation of those then can be the breaking of a precept. And I'd still say it's immoral because there's a social contract there, but it's of a different category. And then the whole question of what's wholesome or unwholesome, to me, is a much bigger frame and encompassing everything that's supporting the cultivation, preservation, maturation of the good, and the development and the movement towards the alleviation of suffering. So that's like a much bigger frame there, and there's many things that might be unskillful or unsupportive of that, but we wouldn't deem them immoral. So let's put the wandering mind in there, which we were talking about yesterday. Wandering mind is unskillful, like just unfocused, nattering mind. It doesn't support the cultivation, the maturation, the nourishment, the preservation of good. And it's not kind of furthering us towards a goal of overturning suffering. It is in itself suffering, but it's not immoral. So So that's a wonderful question. I like that. It's nice to make those kind of distinctions and reflect on that, something like that. So let's see. I saw something else down here. Lots of good mornings. Oh, good. We did get some thumbs up. Okay, BC from Scotland, I believe. Attachment to desire and kāma-taṇhā in action. They think that's for monks to consider, and lay people can imbibe moderately. I feel that that's just their view, but it's not Buddhism. What do you think? Attachment to desire and kāma-taṇhā in action. Well, I think what you're getting at here is some sort of justification for the relationship that non-monastics, you might say, have to the sense realm or sense pleasure. And there actually are a few suttas where sensuality kind of comes up, and someone asserts, isn't it appropriate as a layperson or as a householder? And I forget exactly how the Buddha words his response to that, but there does seem to be some support for some sort of distinction there between somebody who is a committed renunciate, especially a committed renunciant follower of the Buddha, so someone on the 8 precepts, or somebody who's taken up ordination into his monastic order. There's a pursuit of sensuality that's wholly inappropriate for a monastic, that's still okay socially or conventionally for a layperson. So that's one distinction that we can kind of make around there. But the Buddha also kind of says, even for a layperson, one should not sort of neglect. And I think you've spelled kama wrong here. Like, that's a K-A-M-A if we're talking about sensual desire. So, the Buddha sort of says, and even for a layperson who lives closer to that, more in connection with that, and say socially, it's more appropriate to enjoy sense pleasures, that one should reflect on the downside and the danger in sensuality from time to time. So, and then I don't like to make so much of this distinction between the monk and the layperson, because it's really more a personal sort of choice. If one's spiritual life and the endeavor of trying to understand and overturn dukkha in one's life is relatively serious, then this is not an issue that one should neglect, whether you're ordained or not. It's an important part of the teaching, and to neglect it is to leave a very fundamental sort of source of dukkha unexamined. So you don't get a get out of jail free card just by being a layperson, and you can't just give a pass on all the teachings that are focused on kāma-taṇhā. And I do from time to time sort of see certain meditations and reflections excused in a very casual way of like, well, you have to remember the Buddha was talking to these renunciant monastic disciples of his, who are committed to celibacy. And they try to, sometimes too much, I think, pass it off as just, it's a teaching targeted at them. It doesn't really speak to me as a householder, a layperson, a non-monastic, and I think it's easy to make too much of that. So, and the Buddha very clearly calls out or flags somebody praising sensuality as not being important, as somebody who does not represent him in his teaching, or someone who says sensuality is not an obstacle in this endeavor to develop the path and overturn suffering. So, and to me, that's a huge red flag when I read about various teachers of different types and self-proclaimed arhants out there who claim that sensuality is not an obstacle in this endeavor of overcoming dukkha. I know clearly, based on my own kind of faith in the Buddhist teaching, that they must be talking about a different kind of enlightenment. So, Marilyn, you got to get me a better icon here, or you don't have to gotta, but bring me a nicer icon. You look a little gray and anonymous here, so it doesn't have to be a photo of you. Something inspiring is fine. Something beautiful and inspiring to share with myself and your friends here on the morning coffee. So I am so tired. So much awareness, so much effort. Can awareness be dukkha? Is this a big review of the First Noble Truth? Awareness is effort, but it's more, it's effort and tiresome to change our mind, and it takes effort and it's tiresome if we're kind of pushing that process. So there's a saying that the teaching is beautiful in the beginning, beautiful in the middle, beautiful in the end. So if you're feeling tired and awareness is something that's tiresome, reflect on how you can adjust your effort and your motivation to sort of awaken and to cultivate awareness so that it's more easeful and beautiful. Because if it's tiresome, there's some refinement that needs to happen there, and that's not very sustainable long term. So, can awareness be dukkha? We have to define awareness, and we have to sort of choose what we mean by dukkha here, I would have to say. So, I mean, it can be painful to be aware of something, yes, like as in dukkha vedana. And awareness itself is not really the goal. I mean, cultivating awareness, more specifically, cultivating sati and sampajanya and cultivating samadhi are important parts of the path. So, even in some sense, in the most refined sense, even samadhi, jhana samadhi, is dukkha, because it's conditioned, it's ephemeral, it's therefore it's unsatisfactory. But it's the most satisfactory thing you'll find in the conditioned realm of the worldly dhammas, the conditioned dhammas. So, I'm not exactly sure, Marilyn, what to do with the second question here. Is this a big review of the First Noble Truth? Awareness being dukkha. I mean, certainly in the First Noble Truth, the Buddha is encouraging us to awaken to the truth of dukkha. So Chloe, would your tradition allow monks to join a protest? Probably not, but I don't know if there's a specific policy on that in by our tradition, meaning the Ajahn lineage, sort of Wapapong tradition, as they call it. But in Thailand, there's a strong cultural sense that monks should not be involved in politics. And, so to the extent that a protest is a political action, it doesn't seem appropriate. And also, even in the suttas, like part of what it means to leave the home life and to be a monastic or a samana is to step back from civic duties and responsibilities of your average householder or citizen. So, so that's part of, I think, what informs the sense in Thailand, and that sense is even stronger, I think, in the forest tradition, which maybe takes 2 steps back instead of 1 from a lot of the involvement that your average household or citizen or non-monastic has. There's support of being engaged and living up to your civic responsibilities as a good and responsible layperson. But the monastics are in a very different position. I mean, we don't pay taxes, we don't vote. We're trying to be available for the whole of society, and politics can really muddy the water and limit people's comfort in drawing near to the Sangha. So I myself am not drawn to joining protests. So some Buddhists I know, let's see, another question here. Some Buddhists I know who are involved in a Buddhist group are against the 5th precept. They are like, it's moderate alcohol intake. It's fine. I disagree. What do you think? Well, I agree with you, BC. I think they're doing a disservice to the 5th precept. It's fairly clearly defined for the monks. They're not to drink any alcohol whatsoever. I don't know that it's that clearly or tightly defined for a lay person in the 5th precept, just by the way it's worded. And this, I think the 5th precept, one thing that does add some maybe confusion or nuance to it is the 5th precept sits a little differently than the other 4. Like, it's not objectively immoral to drink alcohol. But it's something that causes a lot of problems in societies, and certain individuals have great problems with moderate alcohol intake. And so, my counsel to people is just to abstain. It's the clearest way to kind of hold the 5th precept, is total abstinence. So, but I don't. Where to draw the line that is a little bit difficult. So, even people that engage in moderate alcohol intake, I don't think are really holding the 5th precept properly. So, because the precept is to refrain from intoxicants, which dull and cloud the mind. So, and it varies from person to person, but it doesn't take much to dull or cloud the mind with with intoxicants. So I tend to side with you, and I also think it's the clearest kind of strategy is just to abstain. It's very simple. You don't have to have some complicated, well, I'll drink in this situation and I'll drink this much, or I'll drink until I feel like this or feel like that, and that's where I'll stop, But having talked to people over the years, trying to hold the fifth precept or make sense of how they want to practice it, I do have a healthy respect for how difficult that can be socially for people. And I always thought it's a bit of a shame that people aren't more supportive of people that just want to take a more cautious standard around intoxicants. You know, like it's curious that, like, if your doctor told you that you shouldn't drink alcohol for some reason, and then you're at a dinner and someone was questioning why you're not having a drink, and you said your doctor told you that you shouldn't, everybody be fine with that. But if you say, if you quote religious reasons, like, many people are not okay with that. And what's even worse is just personal, like, no, I don't like to drink or something. People sometimes will argue with you or find that very intimidating or threatening, or which is just kind of crazy. Mhm. Okay. Try to deal with a couple more here, and then we'll wrap up for today. How do you feel about meditation immediately upon waking up in the morning? Well, I think it's a good experiment. So, and I don't generally do it. I've tried to do that. Like, usually when I tried it, I sort of set a period of time and made a commitment to myself, just sort of, as soon as I wake up, first thing is to throw off the sheets or throw off my blanket, sit up and get into a meditation posture, and then meditate for a certain period of time. And it's interesting kind of experiment. I mean, I don't find it the most effective for me meditating. It's usually better for me to get up and do some movement, to kind of clean up my hut, to shave, to do some movement and exercise, some walking meditation, and then come to meditation a little bit later. So, but some people find it really the best time. So my encouragement is just experiment and see what you think about it. One thing I really do like to do when I wake up is create just some spaciousness before I just jump into sort of activity and routines. So, wake up and give myself, I don't really call it meditation, but try to sort of get up out of bed and then just do some standing and let the body kind of wake up and just watch over the mind before I get kind of caught up in various routines. And I find that's kind of interesting kind of way to start the day, because it's just so easy to get sucked into the habitual routines we have, like not just physical, but mental and emotional routines. And when we wake up, there is this kind of opportunity, this kind of spaciousness. So, okay, well, I'm going to keep that at this today. I see there's a whole bunch of other questions here. So, a couple more reflections on the fifth precept. I used to fill a beer can with water at family events and no one would bother me. So, I don't know if we could call that a skillful deception or not, but it makes me laugh. So, Jessica, I'd like to hear how that goes. I love telling people I don't drink for religious reasons. It might be better to put it that way too. You don't even have to declare yourself a Buddhist or argue it. For some people, that might be enough. And then Frank's, yeah, you can just expand the notion of health. I like that. You could expand that to physical, mental, and spiritual too. All right, well, let's leave it at that today, friends. I'm going to try to be disciplined and wrap things up at 8:30. I will see you all tomorrow morning for coffee time. I hope you have a good day. And we'll have some new monks arriving today, so it'll be interesting. Bye for now.